So being culturally aware or sensitive in your trip or when you're visiting communities like this is quite important for various reasons. These are communities that don't get that many visitors each year, and it's not the first time that they receive visitors when you guys show up, but it's important from our organization's standpoint and also our relationship with the village that we whenever we bring in visitors and whenever we show up ourselves, it's important to just have a sense of awareness in terms of who we're living with and who we're staying with, and that it's very much a visit based on their terms and in their culture, and that's something that we very much need to respect. I, however, also want to say that because of the fact that they know that we are from different parts of the world and we have other customs and other traditions where we come from, there is also a level of acceptance. So it's not a huge deal if we make some smaller mistakes or if we get misunderstood once in a while, but we try to avoid this as much as possible. And I just want to run through a couple of just suggestions or pieces of advice that I strongly encourage you to take to heart and just bear with you during the trip. And really, it's no rocket science here. You know, I'm a firm believer in that being nice and being you know, having a positive spirit and a positive attitude in general reflects positively and in any culture, in despite of if you speak the language or not. And you know, it's very much similar to in many ways to our culture. You know, if you smile, if you're interested, if you're excited, that attracts people, and of course it does also here in this village. And I just but if we want to come down to specifics, villagers really appreciate if you say, for example, hello or sabaidi, which is their way of saying hello, the way they do it. So when you greet somebody, say sabaidi and put your hands together. Another thing you can do, which is easy to remember, is a word kopchai. That means thank you. So if someone serves you a meal at your homestay, please express your gratitude or say kopchai for the food that you've been served. And another thing that it's important in these communities is to respect the village elders, particularly the ones that are of the older generation. And to do that is also that whenever you enter into a door or you meet somebody, is that you bow your head a little bit. It doesn't have to be a big gesture, but just so they can recognize that. That's a very respectful and a nice way to show your respect towards village elders in particular. And again, engaged, you know, even if we can't use the same language, to still try to communicate with your hands, or you will be getting a kind of a short, like a phrase book with some words you can try to use and be interactive and inclusive. People really appreciate and love that. So on the flip side of that, so things that we should be aware of not doing in particular is, as I said, it might be not, you know, super big deals, but these are just things that you can bear in mind. It's generally in the village, it's a quiet, you know, way of living. People don't yell or scream that much. So we should, you know, even when we talk or communicate, you should try to have a soft voice and not to laugh too hard or shout too much or anything like that. That's a good reminder. Another important thing is also try not to point too much. It's something that they don't do. It's so if you ask for example, if you want to have something across the table, you don't point at it. You either walk yourself to get it yourself, or you whisper, or you say to your friend if they can get it, or you find another solution. But pointing is generally considered inappropriate. Another thing that Lao culture has, and also the cultures in the minority communities, that it's generally not a culture where you show too much emotion, whether it's big laughter or big sadness. So we try to, of course, amongst the group, and of course it's when we are at the work site and when we are together as a group, just the group, we can communicate and talk sort of amongst ourselves with our normal way of kind of interacting and expressing emotions. But especially when you're staying with your families, you can have that in mind. Another just very practical advice is to keep it's inappropriate to keep your feet when you're eating against the table. You will be sitting down eating, and to point your feet at the table or to point your feet at somebody else it's considered also inappropriate. So you have those away from the center of the of the group, or away from the table. That's also quite important. And just in general, to respect space. You will be staying at another, a family where things might be, not very well organized or not, but that doesn't mean that I think we as visitors should have the right to spread our things out, or we try to keep it tidy, and we try to when we wake up in the morning, make our beds a little bit, even though we might consider that it's a little bit dirty, or it doesn't really matter so much what it looks like, because maybe the house is quite messy anyway. We should just really try our best to keep our stuff together in our space that we have been allowed to stay at, just nice and tidy. So overall, that's some very general advice. I don't want to bombard you with too many of these things. Just to in general, I don't think it's any rocket science, but just keep a good spirit, and bear in mind that we're visiting someone else and we're there on their terms. And perhaps one of the most important piece of advice is to, if you're unsure and not if you're not really sure whether something is okay or consider inappropriate, ask. You can always ask me or ask any of the other trip leaders that joins the group whether something is all right or not. We strongly encourage that, and with that I think we will be able to just reduce the risks of insulting somebody or not being sensitive towards the families. So ask heaps of questions, please.